Hello, everyone. My name is Jaime Gonzalez, alongside my beautiful wife, Hua Win. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Lover. Happy belated Mother's Day, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers out there. Hopefully, everyone had a wonderful weekend. And so today we're going to continue because I think we have a lot of good information for them today of part two, how we went from negative net worth to eight figures, in less than 10 years. So please stay.
Welcome to the Live and Give Show with Dr. Jaime Gonzalez and Dr. Hua Win. Join us as we share our experiences and those of other experts in their fields who've discovered financial security while creating a pathway towards giving back to others.
So last episode, we touched on a few items. How we grew up, our mindset, and how it evolved as we continue to learn and get into bigger circles, right? And how we were able to leverage, our education, our mentors, and the great teams that we have built, right? So, and it's all a team game, right? So, and we found out early, that if we did it by ourselves, yeah, we can get to that destination eventually. But if you go with a great team, you can go much further and become much bigger impact, right? To whatever you want to impact, your community, your family, your legacy. And that's what one of our mentors says. If you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go with a great team that you can establish and build.
So I think that's great. I think we can kind of continue from where we took off, but go a little bit more in depth about certain areas instead of a little bit more as general, kind of high level last episode. So I think this session, maybe we go a little bit more deep dive into a couple of the verticals that can really help others, but that has been a big part of what we had to adjust to. And I want to start off what you mentioned about mentors. I think that was a big limiting belief at the beginning because it is an investment, right? And finding out who and which mentor, because there's so many different mentors in different spaces, right? And so we will share kind of how we picked our mentors and in different verticals and how they helped us kind of to the end point, because we have mentors in a lot of different areas, right? So I will start off with one, and then you can kind of talk about which one and what your experience with each one. And so as people are watching the show, and if they're like, well, I'm ready to invest in myself in order to leverage a mentor, what is the criteria and how do you decipher which mentor is the right one for you, right? So I'm going to start off with, the handful that we have. I'm going to start off with one. I think the very first time that we started getting into the self-development journey and into the real estate investing journey was the first time we spent, I would consider, bigger money into investing, right? And so specialty niches, when you pick a mentor, I find it's very important that you find someone who's doing something in the lane that you want to do very successfully already, right? And you want to kind of plan long term what it is. And so I'm going to start off in the business world, specifically in real estate. So when we shared on the last episode, when we ventured into doing apartments, right? Then what we did was we hired a mentor who was specifically doing apartments, right? And leveraging the ecosystem. Now, when you find a mentor, then you kind of look at their resume. Well, are they actually doing what they are teaching. I think that's number one. So whatever it is, if they specialize in whether it's land, whether it's multifamily, whether it's wholesaling, flipping, if you're picking real estate as your vertical, you want to find someone who specializes and is an expert in that vertical. Right. And I think that's step number one. And are they teaching, but also are they successfully producing the results and the outcome and their track record and history of actually doing that successfully and not just selling you a course or a program?
Yeah, I think that is 100%, I mean, spot on. We know some mentors that are teaching, but they're not doing,
Correct.
right? And they're not in the weeds, right? So, and how is a mentor going to teach you what's updated pretty much on a week-to-week basis, especially with like, the asset, class of real estate, right? So it changes very, very quickly. Or if you're going into tech, right? So you want to make sure that your mentor is in the weeds, make sure they're, whether developing apps, or on boards of different companies that are specializing in certain apps, so whatever the vertical is, you want to make sure that they're in there grinding just like you are, so if they are not, you might be left behind, so you might not know, all the updated information, so I 100% agree. In the mentor that we selected, he was in the weeds. I mean, he is buying big deals, he is buying deals by himself, so, and I mean, that's who we looked up to, so he's doing what we want to do. Right. So, but he's also teaching at the same time. So he's a very, very busy guy. But he's right in there with us.
Right. And then another one that I think is really important that, has been a mentor to us has also been in the self-development journey. Right. And, when you talk about, well, how much are we talking about? Our first big investment, I would say, when I came home and Jaime and I came home that first day was about close to $30,000. Was our first one that was like, oh, are we ready for that? Right. But that was kind of our foot into the door of mentorship in the real estate space. And of course, it continued to accelerate even more once we got into more intimate masterminds. And these masterminds are ranging, $25,000 a year to $35,000 a year, right? But then you're filtered out. You're not dealing with thousands of people or hundreds of people. You're dealing now with a smaller, intimate group of experienced operators that we can then partner to condense and collaborate, kind of condense that time frame and that learning curve, right? And so again, yes, that was an investment up front to get into the right room. Proximity to the right people and getting into the right room, because you're not just tapping into their knowledge and their experience, you're tapping into their network and resources. And that's an invaluable part, right? The other one that coincided was, we got into the self-development world. And I think Tony Robbins was another big ticket one that we went around the same time. And I think I think the first time we went, we did like Life Mastery, Wealth Mastery, UPW, Date with Destiny. It was like all a package with Business Mastery. And that on average, I think we spent about invested 40-something thousand around there, right? So again, yes, it was an investment, but it was a decision that Jaime and I were fully on board. But also be mindful, there's a lot of people that invest in a lot of conferences and programs, but they don't execute. I think execution and implementing what they learn to move the needle forward is a critical component. Because if you are investing your money and your time, you actually have to utilize and maximize, right? What's being taught into these programs in order to actually effectively move the needle. Because if you're just showing up and you're taking notes, and then you come home and you do nothing with that, you won't get the same result as someone who showed up to the exact same event or has this exact same mentor, but you don't have the same results. What's the difference?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? So there's a lot more than just attending and hiring a mentor. The big part of the execution lies upon you on a consistent basis to continue building those relationships that you meet in these ecosystems, to continue that relationship with the mentors and the teachings. And, it's been years and years, but we still utilize those teachings in different formats, right? For us to be able to utilize that, because I think self-development and building that inner core goes hand in hand with the business development.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. Going back to our real estate apartment investing mentor. So we had a very good group of people with Mastermind, and that were very experienced. That you can talk to them, for 4 or 5 days. You can have 25, 50 people, 75 people. So that was invaluable.
Mhm.
Like, you're spending time with like big players, right? Yeah, we were very successful in our businesses, but now you get to go into these masterminds, like true masterminds, right? That you can discuss anything is on the table, right? So you can talk about your other businesses, your finances, how much you're making, what your struggles are, what's not going right for you. But they actually help you right there and then, right? So, and then again, it's all about implementation, like you said. Going to our personal development journey, what was that, 8 years ago, whenever we started with Tony Robbins. So at first, for me, I was not implementing pretty much anything, so we would go, I would get hyped up whenever I was there. I would come back so hyped up, for a week or so. And then it starts to cool off, so, and it was just not, helping me very much. Right. So, and then that's why I had to go again, because I was not implementing. Right. Um, and, but at the same time, for me, it's a balance. Right. So I can't be going to these events every 2-3 months just so I can get hyped up. Right. And especially with like, some of these events that are like a party, like a club in there. So it's like, it has to come within me, right?
Mhm.
It has to be within me. It can't be within the room. Because I'm not going to implement very much in the room. They do have us, doing some exercises, but you need to execute whenever you're away from the room, because you're not going to have the whole room there with you, at
Yeah.
home, especially whenever we're together. And if you're implementing, but I'm not, it doesn't work out very well,
Right.
So, but I think it is just getting into the rooms with for me, smaller groups. You can do so much more if it's a true mastermind.
Yeah.
A true mastermind. For me, if it gets too big, there's so many things going on, so many people. You can't talk to someone for more than 10-15 minutes,
Mhm.
because there's 200, 300, 1,000 other people around you, interrupting the conversation, and you're trying to get deep with the particular person on a higher level, but you really can't. Right.
Right. When you talk about, I know I come out of the Tony Robbins very different than what you've come out from it. And I know, we have a business coach, and our business coach is not about the rah rah, right?
Mm-hmm.
He teaches what's very applicable, practical, that really is applicable to any business, any entrepreneur. And so when we moved on to hiring him as one of our mentors, and he's one who really got me out and to the speaking world as well. You know, for you, I know that that was a lot more beneficial for you as far as when we talk about return on investment, right?
Mhm.
Because it was something that, hey, it moved the needle right away. It was something that we can actually utilize, right? And it's not the rah rah, it's not the motivation type things, right?
Mhm.
Because he's a business coach, right? He goes,
Mhm.
I'm not a life coach, I'm not a fitness coach, I'm not here to make you feel good.
Mhm.
Right? And he's one who's out there like doing what he teaches, right? But I knew that that was a lot more beneficial for you. For me, it was both. The self development, because I lacked that a lot more than where you were, right? My journey and transformation in the inner world of self development was a lot more needed. And so I think the benefit for me in the self development world was a lot more impactful.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so, you know, and I say that because even as a couple, as we're attending these events together, and, you know, two people might attend the exact same thing and get a totally different result,
Mhm.
right? And how they view of that. You know, the rah rah at the beginning was crazy for me. I wasn't used to a lot of people to begin with. But that it changed me in the sense of getting outside of my comfort zone and pushing, where I enjoyed it more, right? Where I would enjoy going to things, and it's not like I needed a high to go there and feel the rah rah, but those emotions, I think immersion is super important because it's not just about, you know, going on a Zoom and seeing all of the same principles being taught is not the same for me as if I'm there 3 or 4 days fully immersed in the room with other people that are taking all of this in, right? For me, that's more impactful,
Mhm.
right? And it's not just about the rah rah, because for me, I have seen myself transform into a whole nother version of me and keep elevating, but it's my self-confidence, it's my inner self-worth, it's the other things that are the big drivers that move the needle in the financial world.
Mhm.
But if it doesn't stem from within and the self core isn't developed out, you can teach numbers all you want. But if you don't believe that you can achieve that, and that's too big of a number, then you'll never get it. You'll never move the needle. You only can move it as high as your thermostat allows you to,
Mhm.
right? And if we're like, okay, we think that's the cap of what we can achieve, then we'll never exceed that cap that we put upon ourselves.
Mhm.
Right. And so I think self development in whatever format is more beneficial. I like small, intimate settings myself. Right. Because, like he says, a true mastermind, when you can share your wins, but more importantly, the challenges,
Mhm.
and being in a space where you feel safe enough that you can be vulnerable to share your true challenges and then have feedback from people who have more experience or have resources who are willing to give a helping hand. That's what a true mastermind really is.
Mhm.
In an intimate setting where you can feel safe enough to leave your guard and ego down, to say like, hey, we're doing well, but you know, we are having some challenges in these areas.
Mhm.
Does anybody have some resources, or what are you guys doing during this time where we're all experiencing some of these, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's where, you know, when a mastermind gets too big, it loses that safety, and you know, people are less open to truly being vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
It dilutes the safe space.
Yep. And one of the other things that I do like about you know, the masterminds, the smaller masterminds, is you're there with people that want more out of life,
Yeah.
right? That want more for themselves, that want more for their family, for their community. They want to have a bigger footprint. They want to give back more. It's like if you get that type of, you know, demographic together, you can do so much more, you know? So, I mean, we're part of another group right now. They're thinking like way bigger, you know, by collaborating together, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, you can actually do this together with a big group and make more of an impact and reach your goals at the same time and give back even more. It's like, yeah, sign me up, you know? So, and hopefully, you know, we'll start that off with that particular group. But I mean, I think that is a big, important piece of growing, getting around the people that want more. And yeah, some people say, you want to make sure you like-minded individuals, be around like-minded individuals. Yeah, that's good. But what we say is you want to be around unlike-minded individuals at the same time. It's like, yeah, we're going to go to, health events. We're going to go to real estate events. But where are the other people that are not thinking like us that might add even more value to us by coming from a different aspect of life or business? And that's what actually has helped us quite a bit too. So not just going to, real estate meetups, but other types of meetups as well. So we can kind of move on from, do you want to talk about more mentors, or
absolutely. I'm not done with my mentors yet.
Okay, so keep going. Next one.
I hired a health mentor, right? Because I think health is one that can easily get overlooked, especially because we're high achievers and we want to move the needle forward. And it's easy to put health on the back burner, right? And so, has that helped? Absolutely, right? And so I encourage you to look at the wheel of life and make sure that you're not too off balance and off killer, right? Each journey of the wheel, you're going to be focused a little bit more on one versus the other, but you can't be sacrificing one area way too much, right? And health being a big one. And again, when that's your priority, you're naturally good at it, good for you, but I'm naturally not, right? And so do I feel like it's okay to seek out for help if I need it, when I need it, to get me back on the wagon where I need to be, or get my mindset right, or put that back? So yes. So I think mentors and even, health, but find people who are doing well in that health space, right? So I think that's good. So far we have real estate mentors, we have business mentors, we have speaking mentors, we have health mentors, we have self-development mentors. Any other mentors that
yes, we have our technology mentor
technology mentor.
What's up, Ken Walls? I see you on.
Yes, right. And so a lot of these friends become our
athletic
mentors.
mentor, Mr. Jackson Crisp.
Yeah, look at Jackson. He's on there. Look at that. Oh, I met Jackson. I think it through Ken Walls or Bill Walsh. One of those. It's been a few years back. Yes, but it's all, you'd be surprised how many people in circles get connected, right? Hal Wilson's another one, but so it's all different ones, whether it's business, marketing, real estate, self-development, technology, whatever it is. But those are all things that are necessary that have helped us scale our businesses and move the needle. I think one of the things people don't like to talk about that these intimate masterminds do talk about is the actual numbers and financials and money. Like nobody wants to talk about money, right? It's like a taboo.
So we found out, so with these larger masterminds that are very exclusive, that's what they want to talk about. It's like they want to talk about, their net worth. They want to talk about how they're making their money, so they can share, so they can get feedback, And growing up, I was, taught not to talk about money. Like money is scarce. Money doesn't grow on trees.
But then also
money is not abundant.
But you don't also want to come across as like you're bragging. I think that's a big taboo because people are like, if you talk about money, you're going to get judged because it's like you're bragging about what you have. And in these intimate masterminds, people who are doing big things, right? These are some of the people who give back the most, right? They're doing charity work, but they're also really being authentic about what's worked and what hasn't worked, right? In their world of investment or whatever they've done in business, failed businesses, accomplished businesses. But that's how we learn from each other, right? On people who have taken the steps before us. And then even as we're going through our journey, good investments versus bad investments, what we've learned through that journey ourselves, so that we can also tell the next person down, because inevitable that you're going to have ups and downs in the journey. It's not all linear. Success is never linear, right? And you're going to have some of the most successful people tell you how many times they failed in that journey, right? Up and down, but that's part of the journey. And to have the honest conversations, to be able to share that is what makes us want to be in these intimate groups. Because if you're only looking through social media, everything's nice and dandy, everybody looks rich, but nobody's sharing like what really is going on. Like, let's lift the hood and let's share some real stuff for people, right? Let's keep it raw and real. And that's why we like these people who are like sharing, like, hey, I lost X, Y, and Z. I did really well here. This is my net worth. That was last year. This is now 5 years now. And that helps us put a wow, this is possible. This is how they did it. This is the sequence and the blueprint, right? And that helps us okay, you did this to this, but how, right?
A few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, you have calculated the amount of money that we had spent on mentors. And this is 3 years ago.
Yes.
I don't think you've shown me any updates or anything, but can you tell the people how much, total we had spent just on mentors themselves? I remember.
You say it, because I don't remember exactly.
It was $350,000. So this is probably in, I want to say 6 years. In 5 or 6 years, this is how much we had spent on just acquiring a great mentor. And we did a lot of research on all this, but it's an investment, right? So it's like, we don't think about that $350, $300,000, we would think about what we're doing now and what, and the bigger purpose, right? So what we want to do and what our why is, and just bigger things like, sticking to our values, but hey, are we able to do this with our values, and how many more people can we impact? Right. So that is a 100% investment. So
right. But pushing beyond the comfort zone to be able to know these are investments. Our formal education to get our doctorate degree combined was an investment about $350,000. An additional $350,000, right? So you're talking about a $700,000 investment in ourselves. This is all our formal education, our self-education, leveling up in every aspect of our life up to date, today's date. Now, what's been the ROI? Well, the numbers show in the 10 years what the ROI has been, right? The results speak for themselves, right? So was it worth it? Absolutely. Are we done? Absolutely not, right? We continue to learn because markets change, we adapt, we grow, and we change. And we continue to build these relationships, and knowing that we have never made it, right? We're always still learning. We're always still growing. And the goal is to get into the rooms and connect with people that really help us grow in all aspects of our life in a positive way, right? And do you have to kiss a lot of frogs along the way to filter out the right ones? Yes, right? And then you pivot, right? You have to learn to adapt, because there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of things that are being sold. Some are good investments, some maybe not so much, right? And you have to find what is right for you, and what do you want to continue, and what do you need to pivot and adjust. And I think that's the biggest lesson, is you have to be a leader of your own life. You cannot just be a sheep and follow the herd where everybody is doing. You have to decipher, right, what it is, and is it in alignment with your long-term life goal, right? Otherwise, it's like, well, yeah, that's great, but is that the end result I want, right?
There's a quote by Ken Walls here that he put from Jim Rohn. A formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune.
Absolutely. Jim
Oh,
Rohn's
my God.
quote, we live by that for sure.
Oh yeah.
So let's move on from mentors. I'm ready. I just wanted to, I had to emphasize it. And I know we spent a lot of time on that, but when people hear a big ticket price, immediately people were like, no, that's way too much.
Mhm.
Right. But instead of the cost, what is the value?
Mhm.
What is the value of that?
Mhm.
And talk to people already in the program.
Mhm.
See if they have truly success of their students, right,
Mhm.
in mind. And are they moving the needle, or is it just selling another program to make another buck?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. All right. Next topic. Go ahead, lover.
So no, mentors was something that really, really sped up our growth, right? And now we had, a couple of other businesses at the same time, but we had to make some time for this other business, right? With our real estate business. And we had to work less days in, seeing patients. But now we had another business on the other side that we were still, trying to establish. And what we wanted to make sure is in our other businesses is, can we scale back and still continue to grow in those two businesses, in our healthcare business? And can we establish this real estate business and grow that exponentially? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience first. So whenever I was practicing and 5, 6, 7 days a week grinding, 60, 70 hours a week, and I'm like, whoa, I have to scale back and not
Mhm.
work, maybe 2, 3 days seeing patients. I don't think I'm replaceable. I think I do the best job than anyone else can in my business because I know it inside and out. And I don't know what your thinking was, but we'll get to it in a little bit. But I didn't see that part going very quickly. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do half a day off seeing patients and then maybe start, underwriting for,
Mhm.
6 hours each day or each week for this particular day. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna take the plunge and I'm gonna do one full day, of real estate and 6 days seeing patients. And then so we decided to hire, other staff, and we hired specifically so they can replace me, right? This is how I hired because I do the hiring at the office. So I hired, someone that's very technical and that has, a great personality.
Mhm.
And they were great. They were working out fantastic. I was like, man, can I leverage this person that I just hired and have him work, 2 days a week, and then I can underwrite more throughout the day, throughout the week.
Mhm.
And so we were just trying that out, and that worked out. I was like, wow. So I decided to hire another staff, another doctor. And so that's 2 doctors. And I was like,
Mhm.
can they replace my third day and your second day or third day as well? And by golly, they did. They were not only producing as much as me, they were producing more than me. that blew me away. It's like, oh my gosh, I had the, I don't have really an ego, but I think, that played a factor into me hiring a little bit quicker, a little bit earlier. Um, but yeah, I was scared that our business was going to decrease dramatically, our healthcare business, and our real estate was not going to do as great because I was not spending enough time, or we were not spending enough time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hired another doctor and another doctor. And then we scaled down and seeing patients, but they were producing as much or more still with 4
Right.
doctors.
And I think that's really important, being able to work on the business and not as much in the business, to be able to scale one business while you're building the other business, and getting the right people and finding doctors specifically that are not just good with patient care alone, but also have business acumen, who have technology and other skill sets that really are critical in building a business and maintaining a business. And for, since you do the hiring and screening and managing and finding these doctors who have the same value system, who also have other additional skill sets as a doctor, that were willing and enjoy the process of doing all the other pillars, it's rare to find doctors that also are able to do that. But that contributes to the success of our businesses scaling even without us. And that was a big fear for both of us, right, as we were transitioning into the real estate business, because automatically our assumption was that our eye care businesses would go down as we're building our real estate business. That was the assumption. And to our surprise, it kept growing, even as we were cutting down our time there, that the numbers and the practice still continue to grow, right? But that was really important, that for our patients, this is our blood, work, and sweat and tears. I don't know what you say, but we built this. This was our dream practices that we've built. And so making sure our patients are well taken care of, even when we're not there, is super important for us, right? And because we've built such a reputation on our practices and the culture, that it was a hard transition for us, but it was very critical for us to be able to scale, because had we just stayed full-time in our practices, there's really no way that we could have grown the way we have grown. And I think that is a big fear for most people, is to think that nobody else can do what you do better, right?
Yeah, and I think what some of our colleagues and friends have done is they do have a full-time job that they have, done fantastic with, W-2, working for a company, for a corporation, whether if they're an engineer or another doctor or whoever. We've had some colleagues just, and that are in the real estate market, that have just left completely, their W-2 right off the bat, and then just transition, immediately to real estate, but it hasn't gone so well,
Right.
So what we did is, we were still, 3/4 of the time in our eye care practices, and then scaled down to about half the time. So slowly doing that, so we want to make sure that both of them are stable and both of them are growing. So we were very conservative by doing that.
Right.
And then now we're just, we hired more staff for the eye care practices. We hired more staff for the real estate practice, or the real estate portfolio. So everything is stable,
Right.
So, and then as you step back from, say, working in the practice or in the real estate business, you can see it with a much clearer vision,
On a
so
high level, yeah.
yeah, and you can, manipulate little things that can actually exponentially grow your business if you're looking at it from the outside in versus just in the business, right? Whenever you're grinding. So for me, I'm not able to think as clearly whenever I'm seeing, say, 8 hours or 10 hours a day with patient care versus if I'm at home and seeing, okay, this is exactly what's taking place. These are the
Right.
KPIs. This is what if we implement this, can this exponentially grow this side of the practice, right?
Mhm.
Whenever I'm grinding, seeing patients, being very busy in the practice, I can't see that.
Right.
You know,
And I'm going to pause you right there because I think you mentioned something that's super important with KPIs, right? And I know that you take charge of that, tracking all the metrics, key performance indicators for those of you who are listening in or watching who don't know what KPIs are. I think that's super critical as you can only improve what you truly measure, right? And you do a really good job with analytics and metrics and utilizing our systems to then have a strategy call. You do that on a monthly basis, I believe. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
And then you look at the metrics for each practice and then decide what areas we're doing really well, what areas, we need to improve. And having those KPIs really help us track individually each part of our practice, right?
Mhm.
But allowing you having less practice hours and now working outside on the higher picture on the metrics and what we can implement on a bigger scale. I think that's really important, right?
Mhm.
Now that you have more time to be able to look at metrics like that. And we do that for all of our businesses too. And then we reevaluate what role we are playing, right? Where is the best use of our time? So again, that's another part that you want to reevaluate. Are you really utilizing the best use of your time? Or is that a position that you can partner with someone or hire someone?
Mhm.
Right? Because that's a big part of there's only so much time that we all have. And when you're dealing with businesses and scaling, what can you delegate, hire, train, or partner, right? Even that maybe has better skill sets. Like Jaime and I are great partners because he's really good at a lot of the things that I am not really good at. And don't want to learn, right? Because
Mhm.
that would not be the best use of my time nor skill set. And so I think that's a big part of when you're learning how to scale your own portfolio or business. But also when he talks about not letting go of your permanent stable cash before you jump into something else,
Mhm.
like real estate, right? Having a cash flow consistency, whether it's your business, that's cash flow, or whether it's your W-2 where you cut off part hours, but you have to have a stable source of income or some sort of money still as you're building your other business that you want if you're looking to transition. Diversification is important because there are times where you may have a pause on money in one business, but you need to have other sources of income coming in.
Mhm.
And that's a perfect example like COVID, right? When we had to close our practices, and even in the real estate market, when times are tough and interest rates are going up and distributions on some properties have to be paused, right? You have to be able to pivot other sources of income. And that's why we're such big believers and we educate so much on diversification of income,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because if your one vertical of business is paused on money or you're in trouble, then you have at least other sources of income that you can tap into.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's super, super important. So very good. Go ahead, continue.
No, I was just gonna because you brought up that point, but we our homework is probably going to be now how many sources of income do we actually have, right? So I think I don't remember the number, but there is a certain number that a statistician came up with of how many sources of income do you have to be a millionaire that has cash flowing assets, right? So and for I'm that's my homework to kind of look that up, and then we can maybe take a look at our number
Yeah.
of income streams that we have,
Right.
and then we can share that. But yeah, that's 100% important. So what other thing or topic do you think has uh, put us to in this category of making a good income on a yearly basis.
You tapped onto it, but I'm going to go in depth on it. Collaboration and teamwork,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think is a big one, because us having our own business alone can only move the needle so far.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can partner, which we've done a lot of partnerships and collaboration in order to really grow, even just the past few years,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out what is our value and our skill sets that we can bring to the table in order to collaborate with people that we can move the needle faster and more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been a big one. And then the second one, in addition to those relationships and partnerships, is our exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Getting out of our comfort zone to be able to speak publicly, to be able to get ourselves out there. You know, there's always a thing people say, it's who you know. It's really more who knows you
Mm-hmm.
than who you know. Yeah, it's important who you know, but who knows you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was not something that we were doing ever before. We were not marketing.
Mm-hmm.
We were not getting out there in the public eye on other people's stages or other people's podcasts or doing our own. I mean, this just within the past few years alone, getting exposure out there, because if people don't know who you are or what you do, and then it's hard to really be able to collaborate and do business if you're kind of hiding in your safe space and you're not getting yourself out there and communicating well what it is that your vision is and that you want to collaborate with people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that piece of the equation is very critical, not only showing up to these networking or conferences or events, but figure out if there's someone that you really like, that they're strong in their space. And even if it's cross collaboration, meaning they don't even have to be in your same industry,
Mm-hmm.
but how can you figure out synergy to collaborate? And that was a big eye opener, because before, when we first started, we were mainly going to conferences that were real estate specific because that was our main lane of focus, right? But what we learned was, as we were growing out to different circles and ecosystems, that people were doing really well in their business in a totally different lane of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we collaborate and work together to build together?
Mm-hmm.
That was a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all mindset, right? So just kind of flipping that around, it's like, okay, would I want a small piece of a large pie, or do I want the whole pie by myself?
Mhm.
You know, do I want to take this whole thing down, you know, and continue to work and grind? I mean, everyone's different, right? But for us, collaboration, taking, you know, small pieces of large projects, that's what we're about now. And you can, and that's where it taps into different streams of income, right? So if you're putting all your work and dedication and income and, you know, on this specific project, well, if something happens to you, you know, that you're not able to function, you know, and or you can't work, or you need a week or two off for vacation, you can't really take that vacation. You know, you
Yeah.
can't really take time for your family very much, you know, so that has to be kind of weighted, you know.
Mhm.
So everyone's different, but, you know, for us and how we've scaled quickly, it's taking small pieces, but of huge projects. And
Mhm.
we're completely fine with that. But that was something that, again, we were very successful in our businesses. We did it by ourselves,
Mhm.
you know, and it was just the mindset. Okay, can we let go of that mindset, right? And can we collaborate with people that are even thinking so much bigger than you? They're thinking so much differently, even though you're in the same business. You know, it's like they're
Mhm.
thinking completely different than you are, you know. And now that we're meeting these people in these exclusive, you know, clubs, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't even know these people existed, you know.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, taking small pieces of different companies or different deals or different projects. I
Right.
think that has really scaled our business as well.
Right. Because imagine if you put all your nest egg in one project, right? And if the market or something happens and that project doesn't go well, and you have everything into that one project instead of being diversified out. So even our investment strategy is very diversified out, you
Mhm.
know, in, asset classes in different markets with different partners and operators. And like that, even though we get a smaller piece, instead of us doing the whole thing by ourselves, that diversifies some of our risk and our benefits, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's important as we're growing and scaling both your business, both in the world of investments. There are no guarantees in anything in business or investments. There's a lot of failures in startups, in businesses, in real estate. I mean, it's all cyclical, right? But how do we diversify and how do you collaborate and at least work with people who always will do the right thing, will do the best and are ethical? And I think that's a big part of our decision making, whether it's a failed project, whether it's a win project. Are the people that we're partnering with going to be at bat doing the right thing when times get tough?
Mhm.
And that is super, super important when you get into the world of business and when large sums of money are involved,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I think that's really, but as we're doing this, the fear is always there. Every time we get into any business or any new project or anything, the fear is still there.
Mhm.
And you have to do the due diligence and you could do the things as best as you can. And still, unexpected things still come up, right? And that's
Mhm.
part of life. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that you don't let fear be your stopping point to move on. And you can't let your past, like, so even if something had failed or didn't do quite as well, or we made a decision that we wish we could, you can't live in that. You can't live on that.
Mhm.
It's like we got to figure out what's now and what do we need for conflict resolution or what are solutions and who are the players, what are they doing right now to move the needle forward, to be able to pivot, to adapt. And that's why it's important to get out there, right?
And and we talked about mentors at the very beginning, but that's why we love mentors. It's like you can fall back on the mentor and ask them right there and then. You can call them up or text them, hey, what are you seeing right now? What is this company doing? What are the huge companies doing? How's the market looking on your side?
Mhm.
What are your experts saying? So I mean, that's what happened during COVID. Our real estate mentors, like, we can text him. He was on calls like almost every night, or almost every week after a little while. So it's like, because they also care, right?
Mhm.
They care about their students and their partners and the residents and the investors. So it's just a trickle down effect, right? So, but yeah, whenever, and also, the job of the mentor is like, yeah, you have to be realistic, but you can't show like your fear to your mentees, right?
Mhm.
It's like, because if this particular mentor would have like, oh my gosh, no, this is not going well, it's like everyone gets freaked out, right? So,
Mhm.
and that, they did a really good job, all our mentors did, so yeah. And it takes a while to do a lot of research, and hopefully, what we've been saying on some of the episodes, we can bring some of them on the show,
Right.
and of course, thank them for being our mentor and being there, but also how they can continue with other people. What is their vision? How are they progressing? How did they become super successful?
Right.
So that way we can add even more value to the listeners.
Right. And I think, another part of continuing growth, getting exposure, having mentors, a lot of people think to be financially free, you have to become a millionaire. You really don't. The wedge, when we talk about it earlier, episodes, truly understanding your financials and laying out your income, your expenses, your diversified other sources. Like if you have a KPI of your financials and where you are, and be honest where you are with your spending, your lifestyle, because the true definition of financial freedom, if you're just looking at numbers, is if you have these other multiple sources of income that can really, even if you didn't show up for work, that can pay all of your living expenses,
Mhm.
right? You're financially free. And that doesn't mean you have to be a millionaire, right?
Mhm.
Somebody can make $2 or $3 million every year and not have any excess money,
Mhm.
right? And still
Oh,
be,
we know people like that.
oh yeah, we do. We know lots of high caliber, high price. They're like, how can, right? But somebody who makes maybe only, 80,000 or 90,000, and they're financially free. They're traveling the world. They're doing whatever they feel like doing. They're not stressed out, right? Because they live a different lifestyle.
And we know people like
And we
that
know
too.
people like that
Mhm.
too, right? They're
Yeah,
doing
thinking
whatever.
about it.
Yeah. They can work from home. They can travel all the time. They have free time. Do they make a whole bunch of crazy money? No. But are they truly financially free? Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And so when we talk, most people think you have to have this huge 7 or 8 figure net worth to be able to be financially free. And that's actually not true,
Mhm.
because we know people who are 8, 9 figure net worth who are still not financial, have not achieved financial or time freedom,
Mhm.
that they're tied to their jobs, they're tied to all their businesses, they're stressed like crazy, right? Would I want to be 9-figure net worth and be stressed to death and sacrifice and like not be able to do what I enjoy? Like, no, no, that's not what I want. And and it's sad because we know people who, like, just someone that we met not too long ago that's a billionaire, right, last year, and then to pass at age 62, to work all his life, and but health was sacrificed, right?
Mhm.
And so that's why I talk about the whole life wheel, because I was like, imagine becoming a billionaire by 62 and then dying without ever getting to really enjoy the fruits of your labor,
Mhm.
right? I was like, well, I don't want that either, right?
Yeah.
And so to have clarity on where you want, and not just to say like, hey, I want to have an 8-figure net worth or a 9-figure net worth, or I want to be a billionaire, right? Because I know plenty of billionaires who are not happy either, right?
Mhm.
And it's crazy because before we're like, ooh, if we ever get to meet billionaires, like now we know billionaires, right? But it's like, is that the lifestyle I really want? Though I don't know, right? Probably not.
So if we can maybe hit one more topic, the I like to mention like liabilities and assets, and so for us, I'm trying to think of a liability that we have that is not a good liability. I don't
Well,
think-
we've paid off most of our liabilities, except for, of course, the debt that we own on our properties. But like, we don't have a mortgage payment, we don't have car payments,
so
we don't have credit card payments.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's I don't think we have right now. I don't think we have liabilities.
We do have
So-
liabilities that are revolving but are paid off every month. Like, we have an American Express business card, but we pay that off on auto pay every single month, right? So, but
yeah,
that's
not
technically a liability.
Yeah,
but
because it goes to
it's
zero
every single month.
Yeah,
But if
so
we
it's-
didn't pay it off, then that's a liability, right?
Yeah. So in all of our, properties, they have a loan, but it's
So that is
being-
a liability. That is a liability because obviously there's a debt on all of these properties, right?
Yeah, but I think that's more of an asset than a liability.
Yeah,
So if you really take a look at it, it's producing more than what it's costing to pay for it. So it's like our house is we personally, the last 6-7 years, we've rented. And that's something that's a little touchy with some people. It's like, okay, well, we used to live in a high rise for almost 5 years, and we rented. And so,
We've owned 2 homes prior to that before selling.
and so whenever we lived in the high rise, it was rent. It was, we can leave at any time. We don't have anything to maintain. And if the light, goes off, I'm calling, downstairs to come fix it. I mean, that was, very transactional with no liability, right? Our cars have been paid off since mine has been paid off since 2010 or 2009. So I have a 20-year-old car.
Yeah.
And you have a 12-year-old car, or no?
No, my car is 16 years old.
Or 16 years old. So we don't have that liability.
Right.
So, and my point is, you can grow so much faster with these darn liabilities, right? So if there is something that's just eating away at your cash flow or your cash, I mean, you can multiply exponentially by investing the money that you would have without the liability, right?
Right.
So it's like we're just multiplying, every car payment, we're just multiplying it because I don't have one, So, and
I think that's a great topic to expand a bit about liabilities, because like our practices, how we strategically pay that off in a short time frame with lower interest, and negotiating terms to be able to pay that off, right? Being able to, like, even the home, because we talk about the home usually being the biggest living expense, usually is the highest bucket that people spend in their cash flow. And so investing is usually not on most people's top priority list of growing their money. It's usually paying all their bills first, right? And the biggest bucket usually being your house and then your car payments, right? And since we never really dealt with when we sold our home, we really didn't have house payments. We didn't have car payments. We haven't had car payments in God knows forever, right? But because we don't have those extra buckets, that wedge keep expanding as we're making more, working extra. And then every time that we would invest and that money would grow, we would reinvest. And that's important, is not just go and spend that money and have a higher luxury life, but, we're all about traveling and charity and experiences, like things that are meaningful for us, that we enjoy. And not to judge anyone who likes fancy things. Like, we like fancy things, right? But just to be strategic, depending on where you are in your journey, to have enough assets and diversified income so that you can go enjoy the fancier and live it up if you want to, right? But most people kind of do the reverse, and they have the fancy cars, they have the fancy homes, they have the designer clothes and designer shoes and everything like that, but they haven't quite built the foundation. And the core foundation of multiple assets and multiple streams of income, that they can have the luxury to be able to do that. Right. And I think that's the core teaching of why we're doing this, is to kind of share, like, what it takes, because at the beginning it was very hard, that we had to give up some of these things, but it was all intentional. It was part of the plan for us to be able to multiply, to have others, because we've lived paycheck to paycheck. We've lived on ramen noodles. I mean, so when people can't relate to us where we are right now, I'm like, trust me, we've lived on ramen noodles, C-class apartment, like, with no extra income, trying to figure out where our next bill was going to get paid. We've been there, right? And so, but all the teachings and things that we've done, and everyone has their own way, right, of how they've built their wealth and how they've done it. And we just want to share what we've done that's worked for us, right? And then talking to other people who've shared their success stories, and they come from super humble beginnings, and there's very similarities. Right. And how they do things. And at first, when you're like, well, that's not how we were taught, automatically, when someone tells you something that goes against your belief system, you automatically want to shut them out. right? Because when we first heard about renting, we thought they were crazy. Like, we know, like, anybody in their right mind knows you need to own a home. Like, why would you? That's the American dream. And that was always our mindset, right? And once we started getting into these inner circles and we started meeting these people who were like, their net worth was like 50 million, 100 million, way more than what we were back in the day, right? And they're like, oh, we're renting. I'm like, what? Why the heck would you rent? Right. And they would talk about the concept of this. And I'm like, oh, well, then they're like, oh, yeah, we would use that money. And then they would move in different places. They would have, one place here, one place there. And then they would use that money and they kept growing their businesses, multiple investments. And then that's how they built their wealth in the 10-year time frame. And then they would show us how they've grown their numbers and what they were doing. And I'm like, well, it's working for them, right? And that's what finally allowed us to open our mind to be like, okay, well, maybe that makes sense. Let's try it, right?
Yeah, but we were taught you got to own a home. It's like, I mean, you have to own a home. And now it's like, I do not want to own a home. It's completely different. So that might change later on down the road, but I want to rent a home, or I want to rent a high rise, or because a lot of the times we are not in our home. We are either at work seeing patients. We are at, conferences. We're eating, lunch and dinner with friends, family, or investors. We're traveling. We're spending a lot of time outdoors with Athena. So it's like,
can I be vulnerable for a second?
You still want to own a home?
No. No, it was really hard when Jaime and I had our Plano home. And it was a home that he had on his laptop. It was like the dream home, the Mediterranean home. And I was pregnant with Athena. And so that's the house that Athena was born in, right? And it fit everything that we had wanted. I was like, oh my gosh, we finally get to afford to move into our dream home. It had the back pool. It had, it was like what? How big of a home was it? Like 4,500 square feet, almost 5,000 square feet, beautiful landscaping. I mean, it was like the dream home. Our parents would come and visit and our friends would come and visit and be like, oh my God, wow. You guys are like living the dream, right? And at that moment, I would be like, oh my God, I felt like it was so wow. It was a big bucket list item that we checked off. And then as we lived there, and it was like 4.5 years in, I realized that we weren't home as much. We were never really up there. We barely ever used our pool that I so wanted. There was so much upkeep in the landscaping. Constantly, we had to hire housekeepers, landscaping people, pool people, pest control. I mean, the things that come with owning a home, and especially a very nice home like that, right? And then after 4.5 years of you finally like, well, are you open to renting, right? You had planted the seed 2 years prior to us selling. But then as we were listening to all these other people, right, talking about renting and that concept of renting, and I was like, wow, now that we've actually lived in the home for almost 5 years and all the upkeep and maintenance and that we weren't really there, it was truly just a checklist item. I was like, you're right. We're not really even ever home. And this is too big of a home for the three of us. Like there's only Athena and the three of us. We barely use 1/5 or 1/10 of the home, right? And it really made sense. But it was one of those things that was just, I think it was an ego thing almost. It was almost like a wow. When people come, I own this big home, right? And we own this big home. It was almost like, are we doing it for the right reasons? Right? And then when I finally, it's like, I am done. Like when I told my mom and, she was like, are you guys okay? Like, why are you selling your home like that? Everybody was worried. Like our parents were like really worried that we were selling our home and we're going to go live in a high rise. I think they thought we were crazy, right? But
yeah, it was 5,000 something square feet to 2,200 square feet,
But the now that we've gone through that, but going to the high rise, it was so much less stress. It was like, There was no maintenance. I was like, oh my God, I don't have to sit and wait for this to be fixed, for that to be done, for this to be done. It was so much upkeep. And 4.5 years living in the high rise was so low maintenance. It fit our lifestyle a lot more. So at that point of our journey, and at this point of our journey, it makes sense. Right.
I think whenever we moved to the high rise, because it was cozy, I got closer, I felt I got closer to my family because it was so small. And you step out the room, I see you right there. You know,
Can't hide anywhere. No,
if
it's
Athena steps out of the room, I could never find her in the big old home. So it was like, I enjoy the high rise. You know, I enjoy places like that. I have everything there. I mean, the workout facility was down there, and there was business conferences, a beautiful setup, 2 pools there.
You walk to work.
It's like, yeah, I mean, I love that place, you know, and now it's becoming a little bit more popular. People kind of moving into the high rise space, and, you know, not having any maintenance, you know, especially with the, you know, if you're just a couple without any kids, you know. So, but I think, you know, going back to liabilities and assets, you know, it's fortunately, you know, we don't have, you know, any that I can think of, any liabilities. Everything's a pure asset that we have right now. And I think that's exponentially what's making us grow quite a bit. If am I open to a house later on down the road? Maybe. You know, so kind of
we're renting a house now, just FYI. We did move out of the high rise last year. We're renting a brand new house, beautiful neighborhood, best school district for Athena, right? 3 minutes away. But we chose to rent because it gives us flexibility to decide however we want to pivot, right? Yeah. And so that's been a choice, but it's a personal decision for your family. But we plant the seeds, because when Jaime planted the seed, I thought he was crazy. You know, I almost got mad at him because he wanted to consider selling our home to rent. I'm like, why would I rent? What would people think? You know, but that was worried about what people thought. Isn't that crazy?
You know, yes, it's crazy. You know, looking back at making that decision to sell that house, do you think that decision has exponentially made you grow, not just income level, but did it change your mindset dramatically, you think?
Oh, it was a huge, because I pondered it for that long. It took me, I mean, when you planted the seed, I pondered that decision very heavily to decide, was this the next chapter of our journey? And was I willing and ready to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because for both of us, it was our dream home. We were never gonna get another home. It was like, oh my God, it looks like a resort. I can come home, you know, lay out, huge backyard. I mean, it was beautiful inside and out, but it takes a lot, you know, to change a mindset. And whenever one pivotal moment can actually do that, that is very powerful. But it doesn't, a lot of the time, you know, you have to give into your ego.
Yes.
Right. And be open, like we've talked about in another episode, be open to other opinions that are completely opposite of yours, and see if that person is actually right.
You know, the decision, but once I made that decision, I made this decision while I was sleeping. And it was, you know how sometimes you get whispers, or you get something that's like, it just feels right. And you know, in your gut, that's what you really want. So I woke up at 4 a.m, and I don't know what happened, but that night I had a whisper, or something that moved, that made it so clear that that's what I wanted. So Jaime was still sleeping. I woke up at 4 a.m. and I started researching places, right? High rises and places of potentially where we would go look. And he woke up by 6 a.m. He wears a night mask and he lifted it up. And I said, I'm finally ready to sell our home. And we hadn't had this conversation for 2 years now. We haven't had the conversation. And that morning, I was 100% clear I was ready to make the leap. And when I said, okay, we're ready to sell the home, and I know which high rises we should go and tour. And that day, we went to go tour. And that day, we put the deposit down. Not even talking to our real estate agent or anything yet. We were already committed, right? And then we told him, you have 30 days to sell this home. Or 60 days. I don't remember, forgot what he said. But yeah, and sure enough, we made the move, and it was a decision. It was a committed decision, meaning we were not going to look back. And we were, whatever decision we were moving forward, that we were not going to regret the decision because we were both going to be 100% on board. And we never looked back since, right? We made the committed decision. We moved into the high rise, but then the mindset had to be whatever result is going to come out of this, we want to make this change. We're ready for the change and to see, because we have bigger things and bigger dreams we want to fulfill, you know? But that had to come like, okay, there's no half and half. I think for me, once, like, I'm pretty sure you're the same way, but once I make a decision, it's like good or bad. We're not looking back and regretting what if, that, right? And so I said, what's the worst thing that can happen? We go and try this for 5 years or whatever. And if we absolutely hate it, we can always look for another home. That was what I finally had to tell myself. I'm like, you know what? Why not? What if this actually succeeds though? And what can we do with this next 5 years of growth to move the needle forward? And what if it actually does some major positive impact? And that's the mindset I had to tell myself. And worst case scenario, what would happen after 5 years of fully giving it a good try and commitment? Worst case scenario, we go look for another home. And then I was like, oh, that's easy, right?
So do you still want a home to buy or another home?
Well,
later
not right
on down the
now.
road?
Not right now. I mean, we own the home in Belize, but it's an asset because we Airbnb, we make money out of that every month, right? We own that home. But as a home for living where we are now, I mean,
we don't pay anything.
We don't pay anything. No, it's paid off. It's a paid off home, but we own the home, right? But it makes money for us. It's actually an asset, income, cash flowing, producing asset. But do we own a home? Yeah, technically we own a home in Belize. But do we want to buy a house here right now? We're in growth mode. Like and we travel so much. I mean, we have such a passion to be on the go and travel. Do I need a forever home right now here? No, I don't need that right now. Just let me travel.
Is there anything else that you can think of that you can add to this episode that has scaled?
Yes. Other sources of income using your intellectual property. What's in between right here? Aside from just a mortar or brick type business or, working for someone else or investing, the other way is how do you utilize your unique superpower and skill sets that maybe you can teach somebody else something, right? That you can be a mentor or you can have online ways of making other ways of income, utilizing your passion and your talent, right? That you can do that's flexible with your schedule, that you still have financial freedom and time freedom, being able to do this, whether you're on the beach in Cancun or Belize, or you're at privacy of your home, where you can do mentoring sessions or, something, right? And I think that was another world of getting out to the business world, seeing other people build businesses, right? Even a speaking business where you can go and actually get paid to speak using your superpower and your passion, or doing mentorship or membership programs, right?
Mhm.
Where you can go on every single week or once a month and have a shared and build communities that you can actually have people collaborate and be willing to pay a low cost membership to be part of the community and learn and leverage one another, right? And so I'm seeing a lot of these people who are building, they're building 6, 7, 8-figure businesses, doing mentorships or, mentorships, memberships, speaking careers, right? And then they use that money from those businesses to go and invest and then grow their money and multiply the investment and diversify out. Money breeds more money, right? It just keeps, it's like we call it pregnant money, right?
Mhm.
And just money just keeps growing, but you have to be resourceful. And I think that's important to learn. But you also have to be careful not to run yourself too thin. It's like, don't do most of your time on minor things. Use minor time on major things that you're really good and passionate about. And that's a big thing. If you can really have time to step back and write it down, what it is that you're really good at and what is really producing the bulk of the income and the results that you're getting,
Mhm.
and use more of your time to do that. And is that something that you have to do, or is that something you can hire, train, and partner with someone else to make that happen faster? Right. And so I think strategizing on a high level, like you mentioned at the very beginning, of best using your time and talent to do that, because most people major in minor things.
Mhm.
I don't know who says that. It's a quote from someone, right? But most people major in minor things, and most of their time is allocated to things that don't really produce the results.
Mhm. They don't really matter.
Right. So I like to minor in major things. Maybe I don't spend a whole lot of time doing things, but trust me, if I spend 1 or 2 hours maximizing that one thing that's really going to create a big needle mover, that's what I want to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
I think maybe a couple other things one thing that I would probably recommend is along the same lines that you were mentioning is getting help. We leverage really, really good virtual assistants that they can actually help you implement your vision, right? So we have some virtual assistants that help us do that. Because they're really good at things that we're not good at,
Mhm.
right? So you can leverage them, video graphics, social media, things like that. So I really, really like that. I think the marketing piece, I think writing a book, either collaborating with someone, writing a
Mhm.
book, or doing your solo book. And we both have done that. So I think that helps you become an expert in your field, right? So you already know the material, you just have to put it on paper, right? So, and we can maybe have our mentor that helps us do that, here on the show as well,
Mhm.
So, but I think those two pieces, in addition to everything that we've talked about, I think that's a really, really good way of coming up with your blueprint on how
You
you
know,
can
that'll be good for
succeed.
next episode, marketing.
Mhm.
Marketing and social media and how we've utilized. I know we have some questions on how did you find your VA and some of the marketing questions. I think that would be a really great segue for our next episode to go more in depth on some of the resources, some of the websites, some of the VAs, how we've been able to find them, and how to kind of, because I think time and most people trying to do their own marketing is a huge one, right? Because that takes a lot of time in content creation and managing and making sure you fully utilize VAs properly, because most of them are super talented,
Mhm.
right? But if you are not good at communicating what it is you're looking for, or you have a timeline of things that you want them to do, that can be a little bit hard too.
Mhm.
Right. And then we've learned even on AI, a lot of really cool AI things that we've just even integrated. So as we're learning in some of these newer technology platforms, we'll be happy to share some of those resources with you guys too. So tune in for the next episode and we'll go deep on that one.
any last words on this hour and a half almost
Oh
episode
my
again?
God. I know there's just so much to cover within this, but it's not just the one thing that people say, well, what moved the needle the most, right? Because there's a lot of different things. It just so happened I grabbed this book, and I think it's something that is good, a good read, and also it's called The Power of One More. This is by Ed Milet. I'm almost finished reading it, but I think it's a very good, because a lot of people start on things and then they kind of give up on
Mhm.
it. And he's been a very successful entrepreneur, but he also talks a little bit more on the whole life wheel of what's really important too, which is really what we focus on as well. So if you haven't read the book, I encourage you to at least pick up that book, especially if you're like, "Ugh, is that going to matter? Even one more thing. I've already tried that. I've already heard that. I've already right? But the
Mhm.
power of one more, right? Because sometimes all it takes is one relationship. Sometimes all it is one more project, one more idea, one more thing that you do. And there's another book called 3 Feet from Gold,
Mhm.
right? You've worked so hard, and it's like you're almost there, but you gave up. Had you just proceeded a little bit more, it could have exponentially led to your growth. And I think we're perfect examples of that, where it was very easy to want to give up had we not stuck with it and just kept pushing forward and being fully committed, for us to be able to start growing and seeing the fruits of our labor and the fruits of all our investment that we put in. But I think that's it for me. But
Yeah, and some of the things that we talked about today, and in the last episode, you can ask us any questions. We're here for you guys, and we've been getting a lot of great feedback from a lot of people. So we are very grateful for all our viewerships that we have in such a short period of time.
And what would really help us, if you're really enjoying the content of what you're seeing on here, we do have a YouTube channel for the Live and Give Show, and we would really appreciate your support if you would go on the YouTube platform, and if you want to watch previous episodes, if you just haven't watched them yet, and subscribe. I think that will really help us if you subscribe, like our channel, so we can continue putting content out for you guys.
Thank you so much. We'll be here on Mondays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time if we are not traveling somewhere in the world. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.